You cannot exceed 255. So your broadcast address now becomes one. You're gonna add that. Okay, you're gonna add that 255 plus the 0 that is here, because you have a 0 here. If you have whatever value, you're gonna have to add it with whatever value you have with the sum of the bits in the host person. Okay, so you pay attention to that. So it is 192.168.0.255. So that is your broadcast address. So to get the broadcast address, always is that you have to add the sum of the host bits to whatever value that you have in the same portion of the network address, and that is your network address. Okay, the same portion. So to find the first valid IP address, you add 1 to the last octet. Always add 1 to the last octet of the network address. Always add 1 to the last octet of the network. So you have to take your pen and then take note of these things. Okay, so you add 1 to whatever value. That is, we have 1 here, so we have 0. We're gonna have to add 1 here. So our broadcast address, the first valid IP is 192.168.0.1, because if you add 1 to 0, it's gonna give you 1. To get the last valid IP address, the best thing you can do always is subtract 1 from whatever value that you have in the last octet of the broadcast address. Whatever value that you have in the last octet of the broadcast, whatever address type, the last octet, whatever value that is there, subtract 1 from it, and then it will give you your last valid IP address. So if I subtract 1 from 255, I'll have 254. So it's 192.168.0.254. So you can see we said that we can have 256 IP addresses for which 254 are valid. You can see that here from 1 to 254 is valid. The 0 here is not valid, is a network address. This one here is the broadcast address. So we find the broadcast address, we find the network at first, we get the network address, we find the broadcast address, then we find the first valid and the last valid. So you can tell you that we have exactly 254 valid IP addresses. So these are the addresses that can be given to devices 192.168.1.0.1, 192.168.0.2, 0.3, 0.4 until you have 254. That will be the end of the this other subnet. So that is one network. Now this network is exhausted. Okay, you cannot add any other. You cannot use 255, you cannot use 256, you cannot use 257. So you need to get a different subnet. You need to get a different network. So this is network 1. So if you have another department that you need to provide another network to, you continue with this subnet. So if you have 255 in the last octet of whatever you have, then that means that site is exhausted. So what you can do is this value that is next here, the value will change to 1 or whatever value that is there. Now let's say we have 255 right here, so we're gonna now this next value is going to change to 1, and then this one will go back to 0. Let's say for instance your clock. Now your clock ticks like that. Okay, all right, let's look at a clock. Let me just take a clock and see. Let me just explain that so you guys can understand that. Okay, let's say for instance I have a clock, I have the hours, let's say minutes, and I have seconds. Okay, now this hour is supposed to be 24 hours, correct? The minutes is supposed to be 60, right? The seconds is supposed to be 60 seconds. Now alright, so when you have here 60 and 60, so now let's look at this. Okay, this is how your clock is supposed to be. Now let's assume that our clock is like this: 0 0 0 0, and then here you have 59. Now with this, what do you think happened to the minutes? Your seconds are 59. Okay, so what do you think happens to this minute? Now your minute now changes, right? Your minute will be 0 0 0 1 0 0. Sorry, 0 0. So it starts like this. Then if this thing goes, the seconds goes again 59. Then you have 0 0 0 2 0 0. So you can see that then as soon as the minute changes, the seconds go to 0 and they start again. Now that is the scenario that I want you guys to use. I want you guys to always remember this clock, and then it will tell you what next to do. Now this one, it went all the way to 55, so it cannot go any further. So in that case, it has to go, it has to drop down. So in that case, your next network, the subnet mask we don't do. The subnet mask is always determined by the number of bits that are part of the network. So we have 24 bits in the network, so therefore the subnet mask here will be 255.255.255.0. that is the classful subnet mask of class C. Now next network would be, if we have 255 here, it cannot have 256, so therefore this one changes to 1. So our next network is 192.168.1.0 CIDR 24 or /24. Now again, this is exactly what you're going to have. You're going to use the same scenario to be able to calculate this one also. So it's important that you guys know how to do that. So the same thing, whatever value you have as a sum. So you have 0 here, so therefore the same 0, you can use the same one here to calculate for as many networks as you want, or as you may desire from this one. So it doesn't matter. So to find the broadcast address here, it is the same thing. Add this sum of these bits together, you're going to have 255 as specified right here. Then you add it to whatever value is in this last octet. So we have 0 here. So if you add 255 to 0, you have 255. So now let's find our broadcast address. Our broadcast address will be on our 192.168